Welcome back to our series where we get to know some of the Equus coaches trained by the Center for Equus Coaching. But if you're new to hearing about Equus coaching, you might be even asking, what is it? I often describe it as learning while moving in your body, in a relationship with another being, while experiencing familiar and new ways of showing up. Ultimately, this can help you explore the gap between where you're at in your life and where you'd actually like to be. All of this is facilitated by horses and certified life coaches. My guess is, however, that the coaches you meet through these conversations will help bring more clarity to this as they share about their work, the benefits their clients are seeing, and how their amazing horse partners are helping in the process. My name is Travis Stock, and I've been an Equus coach since 2013, and I'm one of the instructors for the Center for Equus Coaching. The next coach joining me is Elle Newlands. Elle is a certified Equus coach with an interesting career in Hollywood, voicing the characters in several large video game franchises, animated TV shows, and commercials. So finding out how she came to Equus coaching should be really fun. Let's get into chatting with her. Thanks for joining me, Elle.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So
Live
wonderful.
live from my booth.
Live from your booth.
Yeah.
Yeah, as people can see, you are actually a voice actor. You have a booth in your own home where you get to do this work. It's different than like what my setup looks like. So the place I like to start is to find out, how did you even hear about Equus coaching? Like, what made you jump into our world and want to sign up to do our training?
So I went to a place called
Mm.
Hoffman Institute. It's a personal development, it's a week-long personal development retreat. And I started to attend the graduate groups afterwards, and I actually met, I think she's a master facilitator as well, Rebecca.
Mm.
I met somebody who was training as an Equus coach at that time, and she was explaining to me about the work, and I jumped on it because I've been a horse rider, and like I've been around horses my whole life, like since I was a kid, and the concept of personal development, healing, and horses, sign me up. So 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 she had said that in order to, in order to certify, she had to do her clinic hours afterwards, and she asked me to attend, something that she was putting together, and I did, and I loved the work so much that I decided I would like to do this. So that's how I came to it, and being like a client sort of, and realizing how powerful the work was from that side, and then I realized I wanted to do that.
That's such a common story. I came in as a client first of an Equus
Yeah.
coach, and I experienced it. I was like, "Wait, what was that?" And you could do that as a job. So I think that's a really common place where people find out about our work. And I think it's important that people know. You're alluding to Rebecca doing some of her hours in order to make sure she could become certified, and that's what we do with our students. They go through a training process where they learn the skill sets in teleclasses and on-site form, but part of what they have to do is actually get out there and coach. And for the master facilitator level, like Rebecca was in, she had to run an actual workshop with multiple people in it, and so we kind of up the game. And so you have to practice those and offer those as a way of moving towards certification. So our coaches are not just trained; they're well practiced by the time that they're certified. You mentioned that you've kind of been a horse person for a while. You even have your own horse. You want to tell us a little bit about your own horse?
Yeah, I have my horse. I call her the horse that Halo bought because I was working on the video game Halo,
Uh huh.
when I was lucky enough to, do a lot of motion capture, which is where you have the little dots on your face and you wear the suit and you're on the stage. And so I did motion capture and voiceover for that, and so I made a nice little bit of money from it, so I decided at that point, I was like, "I'm gonna do this thing and buy a horse because I'd never owned one. I'd always, like, leased other people's horses, or I rode horses as a kid, and so I bought my horse, and she's now 32 years old.
Mm,
I've had her, I mean, she was probably late teens when I got her, 'cause I'm trying to do the math, I think I've had her, like, 14 years.
wow.
Um, and I've used her, so I did a couple of sessions with Rebecca, and Rebecca came up and used her with me as the client, and then in reverse, when to certify, I did a lot of clinic hours with people using my horse. Her name is Nochera, She's an Argentine thoroughbred. She's from Argentina. She was brought here for polo, but when I bought her, I retired her out of the game and she just became a pleasure horse. Um, but I call her the backyard shaman. Like yeah,
I
she's
love
like,
that.
yeah, she's my backyard shaman. And it's possible I might write a book about this.
Mm.
She has a wider story, which we don't need to get into, but um, I realized very quickly that we were mirroring each other. We both had similar degrees of trauma in the sense that I could just tell, like, it was like, I don't know, she had like a lot of PTSD symptoms. Um, it took me a year to be able to touch her ears. Like if I tried
Wow.
to touch her face, she wouldn't let me touch her around her face. Polo horses get, mallets come up close and they get pulled and stuff. So like she was very particular about her energy and about who she'll let in, and she's still like that. So she's very stoic. And so when people coach with her or work with her, I'm always amazed and in awe of how she meets them. Like she meets them where they are. So if they want to touch her, she will let them, even though that's not her personality. But it feels like within the sanctity of like a session, she will allow people to just show up and use her as they need. And I've loved watching that. I remember I did a back to back one time, and the first person that went in had a very low energy and was a little scared. And she spent a lot of that session like away from the person and
Mm.
very quiet and very still and didn't move much. And then the next person that came in, she's another voice actor and she has an amazing personality. She's just this huge energy and she was wild and like just her even just stepping in, the horse was like galloping around and like she picked up on that energy. And that's one of the things I've loved with working with my own horse is getting to see how she works as a coach.
Mm. Beautiful. Yeah, I think that's something that people are always surprised at when they come to events, either whether it's a private event or if they come as a group event, that they think once they see a horse, they kind of understand, oh, well, that horse is just like that. But you put a different person in there, a different energy in there, and you get to see a completely different horse. And that's the cool thing about our work is that horses respond in the moment to what they feel. They're not patterned or trained to do one thing the way for every single person. And so you get to experience like lots of different variations based on how you show up, how someone else shows up. If somebody has big energy, even just them stepping into the ring can sometimes be like, whoa, that'll light up the space.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that did happen. I'm trying to think of something Renee said, Rennie, who's one of the one of the coaches. It was like something about if you weren't being honest with if you were disconnected from yourself, from your own energy, then the horse didn't have anything to connect with.
Hmm.
Something like that, and I don't know if I'm saying it wrong, but it was like the horse would kind of like pull away.
Mm.
Um And so I have watched that with people who are a little more timid or who may not know, and I'm probably one of them, I was at some point in my life, who are a little like disconnected from their energy. It's not
Hmm.
something they think about all the time. And it's interesting to watch the horse, I guess because they work through mirror neurons. It's like it's really fascinating to watch like the process of how people will come to find themselves in a session based on how the horse is mirroring back to them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of my favorite things to reflect on with clients is like most of the time we just live in ourselves. And so we don't really pay attention to our impact all the time.
Yeah.
But horses really give us permission and a space to reflect on how I'm showing up impacting the external environment. Sometimes we see people reacting out there in the world and we're not really sure why they react to certain things in certain ways. Well, horses are this like really cool place for us to experiment with. Like, I wonder why that horse is responding that way. And we can take the human judgment out of it. We realize we're just getting some kind of feedback from the horse. The horse is responding in a certain way. They're not judging us. And so we get to reflect on like, what is our impact? And we get to actually get
Yeah.
to know ourselves more by seeing what happens when the horse mirrors that back to us.
Absolutely, and what I've noticed in my sessions is that one of the first things that people usually say is, "I don't think the horse likes me,"
Hmm.
or I think that the horses, and they'll insert thing here, and it's so fascinating to me that right up front, and I've seen it happen so many times, and I did it myself, you get to see that reflection of how much we go through life thinking that other people are thinking things about us and that we're projecting that outwards. And it's interesting because a lot of times, when I was coaching, people would look to me and they would say, "Well, what do you think what's the horse thinking, or what does that mean?" And I'm like, as we coach, we're like, "Well, what does that mean for you? What do you think that means for you?" But definitely I have noticed with myself before I started this coaching, you know, my horse has a diagnosed condition. It's called myofibrillar myopathy, and it's a type of muscle disease um, that is now more commonly diagnosed in horses. But at the time when I had her, it was pretty cutting edge. I had to do a muscle biopsy and send it off to like the science department at, I think it was Minnesota University, and they had a big equine program. And so when I first got Nochera, she was kind of over it. She had had these problems, these health problems, and she didn't love to be ridden. She was very back sensitive, she was mouth sensitive, she was body sensitive. And a lot of people were like, "Oh, she's just a mare," or, "Oh, you have to just show her who's boss," or the things that some,
How many horse people say things like
I
that?
know.
Oh, just a mare. Oh, you just have to show her who's the
Yeah,
boss.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
uh-huh.
And yeah, and something in me was like, I wanted to explore. I was like, no, I don't think it's that, because she's such an honest being, and she's such a beautiful. She really is such a soulful being, and I was like, I don't think it's that. But it was fascinating to me because I remember at the time crying and saying, because I couldn't touch her face and I couldn't touch her ears. And like if I tried to hug her, often she would pull away and I would take that personally and I would cry and I would say, I don't think I got the right horse. And I remember at the time somebody who knows me very well going, oh no, I think you got the right horse. Because she was just a mirror for how disconnected I was, and like, how wounded I was, and how everything that this horse was showing me was a reflection of my own, like, traumatic uh the way I show up in the world through my trauma. And that was, for me, that was the most beautiful and gratifying part of my relationship with her, has been the healing over
Mm.
over a decade and some change, like just the healing that we've done together. And how now this, I mean, they say if you get a mare, like, you've got a mare for life. And like, honestly, this horse, oof,
Hmm.
he's a powerful being. um
I
and
appreciate you sharing about Nochera, and I it makes me think as I'm listening to you about like some of the stories you've recently shared about her on social media and how living this, it sort of points to like all of your work and where you are as in LA, you work in Hollywood and stuff.
Yeah,
And so in January you were going through the fires and she was
yeah,
in a place where she was maybe almost cut off from being able to get out and be rescued and stuff. And
yes,
you kind of went through some scary things together. And I'm just so glad to know that she's doing well, that little old gal is just kicking and is just fine, and that you were able to get her out. So I just wanted to highlight that you guys have even been through something recently together, and were able to
yeah.
make it through that and find a little bit more settled energy recently.
Yeah, I mean, I've been through multiple evacuations with her, actually, because the fires in it
Wow.
have gotten pretty intense.
Yeah.
And the area that she's in is definitely in the fire corridor. Thankfully, we've never actually been affected, but it's gotten close enough that we're under mandatory evacuation. And over the years, it was easier when she was younger, but it's very hard to evacuate a 32-year-old horse
Yeah.
because, I mean, she's a trooper. She will trailer, like, she just walks in a trailer, walks out a trailer. She doesn't fight. She doesn't, but she's old. And like
Mm,
this time around, I really saw it. It was fascinating to me. She usually goes out with other horses that she knows, but this time, the way that this fire came, it was everybody was leaving at different times. And so it was really last minute and it was very fraught. And I ended up in an evacuation center where she didn't know any of the other horses, and her feelings were hurt. Like, she was,
mm,
I remember at one point she was in and I put her in a box. They gave her a box stall because she's so old. They put her inside because there was a lot of Santa Anas and it was really windy. And they put her inside, and She had shavings, she had food round the clock, but she was sad, and I remember I remember at one point, I would walk in and she would walk to the corner and she would face her butt towards me and she'd put her face in the corner, and I would just kinda stand at the door and I would be like, "Are you okay?" You know, I was kinda talking to her, and then I'd be like, "Alright, well, I'm just gonna go get you your hair talk," and she would turn around, and it was almost like she was saying, "I'm upset, but don't leave, like, I'm still here,"
Mm.
and I don't know,
Oh,
I'm probably anthropomorphizing that thing that we're saying that we all do, but, like, I really felt that she was letting me know that like it was hard for her, and she just wanted me there, but she also wanted to reserve the right to, like, take her own space, and that's what I love about her.
that's so beautiful. And it's like exactly like you were having your own little Equus coaching session right there where you were getting to like recognize how your brain was processing what she went through, what you went through, and seeing what you both needed in that moment. And those are the kinds of things that happen in our Equus coaching sessions all the time. We are meaning making beings. We will make meaning on situations, and we unfortunately don't get to ask her exactly what she was thinking in the moment. She can't reflect that back, but it is
No.
curious to know how you interpret it and to be able to see how you interpret it and to find out whether or not or like how you want to show up based on how you interpret it. That's the exact kind of work we do in an Equus coaching session. Let's talk a little bit about why you made the transition or why you started training as an Equus coach based on the fact that you already had a career in a completely different field. So you were already successful in the entertainment industry. You were already voicing characters on these games and animated series. So why was it important to you to add this kind of work into your lifestyle?
I mean, not to sound I don't know what the word would be, but, like,
Oh,
it
just go for it.
trite or I
Uh-huh.
mean, it felt like a calling. I don't know, it was like,
Mm,
I had always been fascinated by my whole life, I've always been super fascinated by the human brain, and I've always been fascinated by behavior and psychology. And I have like like my degree was like politics and history, but like also did a leaning in psychology. And at one point, I actually thought about being a psychologist or a psychiatrist. Like I actually thought about going into the mental health field. Um, and so there is that part of me, and I've done decades of self work, and I'm really fascinated and passionate about self help, like self discovery, and just like the way that we can really retrain our brains. And so for me, I went through the pandemic because I was in one of the pandemic cohorts. um, and so I went through the pandemic. I was going through a divorce. I was living alone. um, I was at that time, my career actually had blown up in a good way. Like, it really during the pandemic, like, video games went crazy viral, and, like,
yeah, what else was everybody doing?
I know, I was in 2 video games that at the same time that, like, were huge titles, and, like, because people were stuck at home, they were just playing video games, so it was like everything was so bizarre in my life. It was like my career was taking off, but my personal life was like tanking, and I was going through so much stress. Um, and I really, honestly, I don't have a definitive answer. I think I just woke up one day and thought to myself, I really want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And like, I want to figure out how to support other people and put not only my passion and my knowledge for, like self-help work and like healing, but also my passion for horses. I
Hmm.
don't know, it just felt like a no-brainer. I was like, I'm going to do this now.
I think you're not alone in feeling that way. And I trust that there's actually people watching this that will hear that and go, yeah, me too. Like, I
Mhm.
feel called to something like this. I want to be a part of the solution. The world feels intense right now. The world feels
Yeah.
scary, whether it's climate stuff, whether it's politics stuff, whether it's social issues. Like, the world feels intense and not everybody knows what to do. So I do think there are many of us that are feeling called to finding ways to be a part of the solution and to be a part of developing and healing and growth work for other with other people and for ourselves. And so I have a hunch that anybody that watches this will many people watching this will actually feel similarly to you, and they'll want to find their own calling. And so, Equus coaching is a pretty good way of doing that. So if you're interested, find us.
Yes.
Now that have both, like, you're a certified Equus coach, so you can do this work, but you're also still doing voice actor work.
Yeah.
Who are the kinds of people as an Equus coach you actually want to be supporting and working with?
So, I myself, I mean, I'm kind of an open book. So, one of the things that I discovered about myself is that I have, probably because I'm from Scotland, I'm
Hmm.
kind of working class Glaswegian Scottish stock, Irish Scottish stock. I realized that I was dealing with a pretty unconscious poverty mindset.
Mm,
And so for me, it showed up in, oh, I don't need to take up too much space, or, oh, success, that's for other people. I'll just take my wee little bit, and like that'll be enough for me. And then I realized that I had imposter syndrome, where when things did blow up for me and things really did become, you know, successful on a like a visible scale, like on the internet, and people started to know who I was terrified.
mm,
And so I think for me, I would love to work with particularly creatives, or I'm working with like particularly creatives and artists and people who feel in some way that they're not quite tapping into their potential in their chosen field, um, and would like to explore what blocks might be there. Like self-sabotage is a big thing for a lot of artistic people. And just in general, just that feeling of, my industry is interesting because especially for actors, for years, it was like, oh, well, you'll just work for a promotion, right? I'll promote you and you'll just work for free.
mhm.
And people would
You
do
just get
that.
exposure. Sure, you
Yeah,
should definitely work for free.
you'll just work for exposure, right? And then
Uh-huh.
also like just there was a lot of fear. A lot of actors and creatives come to this because there's a part of them that's really wants validation and really
Mm,
wants acceptance and wants to be seen and heard, but there's a wound under there, and so it's very scary. And so and it's unconscious. I know it was for me. I came here when I was like 20 and I was like full of, I'm going to win an Oscar. Yeah, I'd love to win an Oscar and I wanted to do. And then you very quickly realize that that's not for everybody.
mhm, mhm.
And that sometimes we're just put here on this planet, Earth, whatever, to whatever. I just say it like it's not like it's an allegedly a planet,
Oh, just Earth.
you know, allegedly planet Earth. But yeah, it's like we come here and sometimes we just, I don't know, I'm very spiritual. So for me, it's like the way I make sense of the world is if something feels really like unjust, or it just doesn't make sense to me, or terrible things happen, my brain says, all right, so maybe there's a part of my soul, or there's a part of a soul calling that I came here to work on this, or, and I try to like make sense of it. So for me, applying this kind of horse, which to me is, I think that what we do is pretty magical. I mean, it's like
Mhm,
there's an element to it that's otherworldly, that, it's scientific, but it also isn't. Um, which I love about it. But I'd love to figure out a way to really support people's dreams. Like, I don't know, like as somebody who has struggled a lot with, like I said, poverty mindset and then imposter syndrome, and realizing that the thing I wanted, I got it, and then I was scared of it. There's a lot to unpack.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think that's what many of us that are in this field are working with, is like we work from our own experience. We work
Yeah,
from our own understandings of what we've been through, and we learn to help others free themselves from it as we go further along. And
yeah,
I think your example stories are such important ways to sort of elicit like why anybody would want to do an Equus coaching session. Like, recognizing that we all come from families and generations that teach us certain things. So when I was
yes,
defining Equus coaching in the beginning, I was talking about how it's a space where you can experience both your familiar patterns and try on new ones as you're
yeah,
experimenting in different ways of showing up. And so you get that familiar feeling of what it's like to have poverty mindset. or
Mhm.
to feel that, or to self-sabotage, or to feel like success is not enough for you. But then in an Equus coaching session, you get to see how the horse responds to you when you're feeling those ways.
Yes.
But then we actually get to try on something new, which is like an abundant perspective, or that was what my family taught me, and I now believe in something else. I've had success. I've had my games blow up. I get to own that success, and in owning that, you get to see how the horse shows up differently too. So you get to try on new patterns and see how does that impact the external environment differently than when I'm in my familiar patterns. And I love that part of Equus because it's very grounded and it's
Yeah.
very like sort of like obvious, but it's also nonverbal in many ways. And it's also sort of unseen in some ways. So it does have that kind of spiritual mystic kind of feeling as well.
So when I worked with Rebecca for the first time, my goal was I just wanna move the horse from this corner to that corner. I just wanna be able without because with Equus coaching, it's like you're not riding, you're not leading, there's no ropes that you're like there's nothing
Yeah, you've got a
attaching you.
free horse that you are face to face with and you got to
Yes.
figure it out.
Yes, so it's basically energy. It's like
Yeah.
it's an energy exchange, and so I was like, I just want to be able to move the horse, and that became my whole. And I'm a horse person. I know how to move a horse, but like I was so frustrated that every single thing I tried to do without a lead rope or like a lunge whip that you're sort of like clicking in the air, like snapping in the air, and like I had no control over this horse. All of those artificial controls that, reins or a lead rope or any of those things, like it was just me and the horse. And it
Mm,
it got so frustrating. And it was like I started to realize and I started to cry and I was getting really like I was feeling so much shame and I was like, it was so hard for me. And I realized it was just because I didn't and I talked about this earlier, like I was kind of disconnected and I didn't really know how I was moving in the world. So, how am I supposed to move a horse when I don't even know how I'm moving in the world? And so
mm,
a lot of times in coaching sessions with people, they'll talk about that. They'll say they feel small or they feel like that they're scared or they don't know. And so they'll when they start to work with the horse, they'll want to move them. And then the session becomes it's so fascinating watching them going through that process of trying things and stuff coming up like, oh, the horse doesn't like me. Oh, I didn't
mm.
do that right. Or, I got in the horse's way. Or, and it's like, and eventually it just becomes, oh, I can do this. Like, this is fun. Like, it changes. I watch it morph. Um, and for me, that was like a big one myself. It was just that moment of clarity where I was like, oh, I'm expecting this being to do something that I'm actually and that's a weird thing to say as a human that you don't know how you move.
Uh-huh.
It's beyond motor skills, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm so glad you shared that example. It's such a beautiful example of how horses don't lie, that they
Mhm.
respond to what they feel, not what they think should be happening, not
Yeah.
what you think should be happening. That there was a misalignment in that for you between like what you were trying to do by thinking it right and trying to
Yeah.
do the right technical moves to try to move a horse. And yet if your energy's not there, if you're disconnected from yourself, that horse mirrors that same disconnection and doesn't move. And
Absolutely.
that's humbling to go through, to get feedback that, oh, there's something that's not in alignment here. There's something out of alignment that is getting in the way of me being able to effectively communicate and
Yeah.
effectively show up in the world. And they're so powerful to go, if that's happening here, where else in my life is that also showing up?
Yes.
And that's Equus coaching right there.
Yeah.
We see the patterns show up in the Equus coaching session, and then we start to go, okay, and where else does that show up?
Yes.
Because if it's showing up elsewhere, we might have be able to come up with a new solution or strategy for you to better navigate it when it's out there in the real world. So I love that whole
Absolutely.
metaphor quality of our work.
Yeah, and it's like it was that moment of realizing that I was moving through the world from logic and ego as
Ah,
opposed to connection and trust.
Oh gosh, how many of us are doing the same thing? Logic and ego, logic and ego, logic and
Yeah,
ego.
but that's what I love about working with horses is that they will not respond to that. They just will not respond to you wanting them to do something just
Mhm,
because you want it and you're thinking it and you're I don't know, you're going through the motions. It's like I don't know, the horse just doesn't respond to that. And so it's such a humbling, it's like you said, it's very humbling
mhm.
to see I don't know, to see that disconnect that we so often have being reflected back to us in such a
Yeah.
big way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, my last question for you is something I'd like to challenge each of the coaches to try, which is to see if you could give me your own definition of what Equus coaching is. I kind of tried it in the beginning to give my definition, but I'd like to hear what you would pitch. If somebody was brand new to hearing about this, what would be the way you would share tell us what it is?
I mean, for me, I just basically say that I'm the bridge. I'm
Mm,
just the bridge between the horse and the human. I'm just the bridge in between. Um, and that really, for me, I'm like the work takes don't pay attention to me, like, the work takes place with you and the horse, and I'm just the bridge between you being somewhere and getting to where you wanna go,
mm,
but really the work is with the horse, and
yeah.
I'm just sort of the meat in the sandwich.
The meat and the sandwich. Love that. Well, I've had such a great time connecting with you, learning about your horse, learning about your journey with Equus coaching, and finding out about how you want to bring this into the world you kind of know and work in already. So,
Yeah.
if there are creatives out there that want to do some work with you, that want to explore Equus coaching with you, how might they find you and your work in the world?
So, I have social media, just my name, Elle Newlands Graham. I also have Equus Coach Elle on Instagram.
Mhm.
And I have a website, www.elnewlands.com.
Well, thanks for joining me, Elle. If you're one of those people that's watching and listening and you feel interested in this work that we're talking about, if you feel inspired to find out more, please go to equuscoach.com. And if you're one of those people like Elle that is feeling just called to something, even if that sounds trite, but you feel called to it, you want to be a part of the solution, you're interested in horses, you're interested in people, even if you don't have any horse skills, even if you don't have any people skills, we can teach you all those things. So go to equuscoach.com to find out more about the cohorts we're running in the future. Thanks again for joining me, Elle.
Thank you.